And now we are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and sportnarium.com/player with an old friend. And the last time we spoke with him, he was running for the city council, and now he's running for the state assembly in Northeast Queens and his home community. And he's got a message that's going to resonate, I'm sure, with many people, and we'll get his side of the story. And obviously, it's always an honor to speak with him. And without further ado, here on the News Report, the #1 global news show candidate for the 26th Assembly District here in Northeast Queens, that's Seth Breland.
Thank you so much for that welcome. Very, very, very happy and glad to be back with you.
Do you feel like we were talking about this off the air? I feel like you're taller, you're older, you're more mature. I feel like last year I spoke with you, it was a different Seth Breland. But I think we got the new and improved, a better Seth Breland. Really, really excited to have you, my friend. Obviously, always an honor to speak with you. We mixed in different things with you. I know we got a lot to talk about, but obviously, I want to talk with us here for our audience that is watching and listening to this, whether it's on SportsWire Radio, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's YouTube, you name a place right now. Seth, talk to me why now you're running here in 2022 for the state assembly in Northeast Queens.
Of course. And hopefully I got taller. Hopefully I did get taller.
I think you did, Seth. I think you did go an inch or two. Certainly.
But yeah, again, thanks for having me on the show. And I was telling you before, you're one of the best interviewers out there, and I love talking with you because it's always a good conversation and discussion. But yeah, I'm running for the 26th Assembly District in Northeast Queens. And, you know, for me, my motivation to running was just we're at a crossroads in our state. We are at a reckoning point where the decisions we make this year and next year will have, long-term effects on our state and our communities. We see a lot of issues right now, and a lot of things are on the line that are important to so many New Yorkers. And I couldn't just sit by and watch as our streets are rampant with crime, where our Asian American and our Caucasian American and our South Asian American communities are being scapegoated for the mess of education that some radical members and the former mayor have made of New York City schools. And I can't sit by while the beauty of our neighborhoods and our single family zoning come under threat from certain elected officials up in Albany. So all that combined really pushed me to run. I think, someone needs to stand up and say something and take a stand. And we definitely need to change Northeast Queens and better leadership and a better advocate, because the current representation we have now is just inadequate. I am sick and tired of letters of concern. I'm sick and tired of politicians promising the same thing around campaign time, but never delivering. And it's the politicians that say they're moderate that we have to watch, because those are the ones who will say something back in the district, but then vote another way in Albany. And that's exactly the type of legislation and legislators that we have right now representing the 26th Assembly District. Someone who has been dishonest with the voters and has not been transparent with the voters and has not been a true advocate for our communities. And it's time for a change. So I couldn't sit idly by, and I know we'll get into the issues in a little bit, but
Sure.
We definitely need a change in leadership and really help put back New York on track.
And I think that it's a growing theme, Seth, and it's not just your district, and I hear it all the time, whether it's in Brooklyn, whether it's in Staten Island, whether it's in the Bronx. And frankly, I think it's Democrat and Republican that people are fed up right now. They're fed up with their quality of life. They're fed up with the fact that the streets aren't safe, the garbage isn't picked up, the mandates have gone on too far. And I think that people from all parties are fed up, and especially here in Northeast Queens, because, you talk about a couple different things and how everybody says they're moderate, and the person that you'd be running against is one of those examples of that. And he's been in office for a long time, and he says one thing and does another thing. And frankly, he's in lockstep with the leadership, not only of the Democratic Party in Albany, but also here in Queens, which we know a lot of corruption has run rampant in the Queens Democratic Party. So it's interesting to me that you say those things, Seth, because I've always felt that this is a district that's home to a lot of moderate and conservative Democrats, but yet the people that we have representing us here, especially in the state assembly and in the 26th Assembly District, have failed us on all fronts.
Yeah, no, you're 100%. And I think a little bit is Republicans years prior have not put up the best candidates, and we have not went into the areas that we need to go into. there's this thing where, and both sides do it, where if that area community is seen to be voting in the other direction of your party, you stay away from it. You don't focus on it. And that's why, you know, this time is going to be different, because I'm going to go into those communities in my district that have voted Democratic and try to sway them over and earn their vote. But you're definitely right. There is corruption is rampant in New York State. New York State, Albany, and in Queens County, I think, is infamous for their corrupted leaders. I feel like every other year we're hearing about some speaker or some assembly
That
member.
goes back to the 70s and 80s.
Right,
That goes back
right,
to Donald Maines and the Crowley family. And
right.
I mean, it's a long list of people that have been infiltrated and have run the Democratic Party, especially in your home borough, that it's long been known for throughout the country.
And I think my opponent, my Democratic opponent, has just really misled voters, which is a serious offense to the trust that you are supposed to have with your constituents. You know, he will go out, the assembly member now, the incumbent, and talk about he's for safe streets and he's for fighting for the values and common sense issues in Albany. But it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And his voting record says very differently. It's very differently.
No question about it. And I've always felt, especially, this is a district, when you think about only New York State, that's really home to a lot of those middle, down the road Democrats that, frankly, not only just elected Vicky Palladino to the city council, but for a long, long time elected Frank Padovan to the state senate. So this is a district that's always been home to a lot of crossover voters. And I think it's the right time now to challenge the assembly member, because, like you said, in a lot of different years, nobody ran against him, or somebody was put on the ballot just to say, yeah, go on the ballot, don't wage a campaign. And I think with your experience, and this is where I'm going to transition into something, you know the Democrats better than anybody, because the last time I spoke with you, you were running for the city council as a Democrat. So you know the Democrats better than anybody. So I almost have to ask you, Seth, I mean, talk to me about from the last time I spoke to you to where we are now.
So yeah, definitely. And I have grown up in listen, New York City is overwhelmingly very, very, very left leaning. That's not everybody, but for the majority of the city. And so I grew up in Democratic circles. I interned for an Democratic assembly member
With Weprin, yep, we talked about that.
with Weprin. We did, and I worked for the Senate, appointed by Senator Schumer. So I'm no stranger to Democratic politics and Democratic backroom deals and Democratic machine queens. I've noticed what goes on. But the switch was kind of easy. It took some thinking and talking to family and friends and just close allies. But it was pretty clear, because when I was running for office, what I tried to do is run on issues that were just common sense, that weren't a Democrat issue, that shouldn't be a Republican issue or a Democrat issue, but just an American Northeast Queenser issue. That we should just want safe streets, good schools, better transportation. You know what I mean? So the Democrats, I think, in a lot of ways, are losing in that battle. And my hope is to pull the party back in one direction, back to the middle, back to common sense when I ran for city council. But obviously, the party has not went that way. And I have put my faith in Democratic officials who promise to be moderate, who promise to back the blue, who promise to clean up our streets, promise to protect our, Jewish and Asian communities who are suffering so much discrimination on a level that we haven't seen in many years, and they haven't. You kind of hope when you support these people, they don't get sucked into this party machine, that they don't fall into rank and file, and a lot have. So my decision to change was, in New York State, Republicans are right on the issues. Republicans are right that we need to eliminate bail reform. Republicans are right that we shouldn't have a governor who's signing a bill that's titled "Less is More" and releasing 200 inmates from Rikers Island that go out and commit crimes. Or we shouldn't have a mayor who decides to target Asian American families and South Asian families when it comes to our specialized high schools and scapegoat them for the problems that we have in our community schools. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing an attack on our freedoms, and we're seeing an attack on
your posters. There's an attack on your posters from the Democratic Party. They've infiltrated the stream here, Seth. We do a lot of wrestling, and you've definitely been running. There's been running interference toward your campaign, and certainly the poster signs have been attacked even. They've attacked the poster signs even.
Yeah. But we keep going, right? We keep going. But no, the Republicans are definitely where we need to be on these issues. And my campaign, again, the three things we're going to go out there and pound the voters on is crime, quality of life when it pertains to the beauty of our neighborhoods, and education.
And your district especially, because your district, again, is not like a district in Manhattan or in Brownstone, Brooklyn. Your district has a lot in common with places like especially Long Island and parts of upstate and Staten Island. And I think that's what makes your district so special. And unfortunately, most notably, your state senators and your assembly members have time and time again, I think, voted against this district, voted against the community. And I think the time is right. And you know what? At the end of the day, listen, when I interviewed you, I interviewed a few other candidates that I supported, and it was the thing to be a Democrat and to help the party be more of a moderate party, the party to me of JFK, the party of Truman, the party of even Bill Clinton. And what concerns me, and again, I know you're a Republican now, but I'm going to ask you the question because you were a Democrat, you know those circles, you were involved with Wepper and everybody else. But what I do see right now with the Democratic Party is that they're starting to lose some of these urban areas, even with a lot of Asians, a lot of Hispanics, where they're looking at it and saying, you know what? These woke and gentrified crazies who believe in all these nonsense things, when they're not about that. They're about family, small business, school, hard work. And the Democratic Party is losing them. And I think we saw the effects of that in the 2021 elections, where we saw Vicky Palladino winning. We saw Ina Vernikoff winning. In full disclosure, I supported the Democrat in that race, Stephen Saperstein. We even saw a number of closer races throughout in the city council because of this shift here from the Hispanic and the Asian communities. I mean, have the Democratic Party just lost their ways, that it's over for them? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, Curtis Lewa and Vicky Palladino, I've gotten to know both, and especially Councilman Palladino. And I'm telling you that they are great people. They are some of the kindest and most genuine people and public servants that I've met. And they truly are out there to serve the community and to represent the needs of their district. And I think they're the best people to do that in their areas, and Curtis and his constituencies. But they spent a lot of time out there talking to voters, not of just their base, but reaching across those disenfranchised Democratic voters and those Democratic voters who were upset about the direction of the party or the left extreme pole of their party. And Vicky and Curtis did a phenomenal job of turning out those Democrats, because if you look at registration in Northeast Queens, Democrats,
it's like 2-1, right? 2.5 to 1, just about.
So they very clearly outnumber Republicans. But Vicky Palladino, she did such a great job of pulling over countless Democrats. The count looks smaller because it was a three-way race, so her victory looks smaller, but we can't discredit that. And I think next time around, she will have a bigger victory. But she pulled over a lot of Democrats, a lot. And because she was just talking to them. She wasn't talking about the crap that's happening in Washington, D.C. or nationally, but she was focusing on her neighborhoods, her neighbors, her in Whitestone, in Bay Terrace, in Bayside, and like she was connecting with what a lot of New Yorkers and people in Northeast Queens are feeling. And they're feeling that they're losing their city, and they're losing their way of life, and they're losing the beauty of their neighborhoods. And that is something that a lot of voters, I think, still care about in 2022. And we're going to see that on the ballot this year. It was the city council that was targeted last year. This year, it's going to be the state races. And I think we're going to see a huge shift. But again, Democrats have done a better job of disenfranchising Asian American voters and Hispanic voters rather than bring them into the party or having them vote for their candidates more. And we'll talk a little about redistricting in a little bit when we get to that. Yep. But it's a big part of disenfranchising voters. But there's no doubt that Vicky did a great job. Curtis did a great job. And I'm going to follow our successes. Listen, even in 2017, when Nicole Malliotakis ran for mayor, she won Northeast Queens. So this is an area where they care about their values, their traditions.
Well, like I said, Frank Padovan was 19 terms in the Senate here. Frank Padovan was always 2.5, 3 to 1, Democrat to Republican. He always came through. Dan Halloran was here for a term, Micah Bell. So there is a history of people crossing over sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think right now, I'm in agreement with you that 2022 might be more of an upheaval than 21 because now people are going to be voting federally. They're going to be voting governor-wise. And those, I think, are reasons why it's going to benefit your race even with the redistricting. And these are reasons why we're always excited to speak with our very good friend, Mr. Seth Breland. He's also a great tennis player, by the way. So I got to make sure, because we are sports. He does know a thing or two about tennis. And I was actually looking into tennis lessons the other day because I still have my racket. I have my racket and my tennis balls. And Seth, I haven't played in ages. Now I'm thinking with the weather getting warm in a couple of months, I got to do something because I got to figure
my lessons. Let's do it.
Well, we might have to. We'll definitely stay tuned for that. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sports Wire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And of course, you can follow Seth and all the great things he is doing on Twitter. It's Seth for NY. You can also keep up to date with him on Instagram and Facebook and everything else that's going on, because he's going to be running for a race that I think you're going to definitely want to pay attention to. And again, Breland to change what leadership looks like. So he's going to give us the leadership that we need here, and we're excited about that once again. Always excited to have Seth on here. And of course, if you like what you hear from us on Sports Wire Radio, please give us a follow and like on Facebook at Sports Wire Radio. Also, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content anytime on sportnarium.com/player. We are also on the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We are on Roku, so we are on different options. Last time we had Seth on, we were just on the radio. Now we have about 8 or 9 different options. So we're growing just like Seth is growing, and we are talking all things related here on the News Report with the campaign for Seth Breland running for the 26th Assembly District. Again, many of those areas were in the city council race last year. So at the end of the day, Seth knows his district. He knows his people. He's been here in Northeast Queens for a long time. Always excited to speak with him. And I'll get to redistricting here in a second, but I want to go back to Curtis Sweeler, because you said you were a Curtis Sweeler Republican. So for those that are watching and listening to this, what does that mean?
So I think what that means is it's a new chapter for the Republican Party, and the type of Republican candidates that we see. We see now Curtis, who ran on issues, and again, he did not focus on the federal issues. He did not focus on.
Right. Well, he did not support Donald Trump. So this was not a Trump Republican. This was not somebody that was running, January 6th insurrections. He was really, like, in a lot of ways, kind of what a Democrat was, 30, 40 years ago.
Right. I think what he's a Republican who's common sensed.
Okay.
Who focused on the things that mattered to New Yorkers, which was cleaning up their streets, which was making sure they had freedom of choice, that they had better schools, that they had a better quality of life. I think that's what it means to be a Curtis Sliwa Republican. It's a new chapter for the Republican Party, and Mr. Sliwa recognized that, and he recognized that Democrats are failing New Yorkers across the city and across the state. And what he did was he capitalized on that. And he unfortunately, he did not win the race, but he proved a lot, and he showed New Yorkers a lot. And I think, what we need is that common sense Republican who's not afraid to be loud, to be blunt, to be able to go into communities that have not been gone into by any elected official or candidate historically, and to pull them out. And again, I've met Curtis. I've had the opportunity to speak with him, and hopefully, I can earn his endorsement a little down the line. But like I said,
don't tip your hand on anything. Whatever you're gonna do, don't say your campaign strategy or anything.
No. What I want to do is be as transparent as possible.
Okay.
So again, I have no problem. I'm a big fan of Curtis. We have a great councilman, Vicky Palladino. I have no problem saying that. But to me, like I said, it's a new chapter of the Republican Party, especially in New York. We're on the rise. We're on the climb. So for me, it's just, being a Republican who's for common sense legislation, for common sense, And
it's interesting because, Seth, we were talking about this off the air, and actually you started a trend, because apparently there was somebody else last year that ran for the city council, and now he's running for state assembly also as a Republican, and that's Alec Bacrazi. And Alec Bacrazi was a legend in the Southern Brooklyn community, the neighborhoods of Brighton Beach and Coney Island, and he's now running very much for the same reasons you're running, because he was a Democrat and he was in the state assembly for a long time, and he was always somebody that was a moderate Democrat, but the party has become infiltrated with AOC and de Blasio, that he said enough is enough, and I'm running now as a Republican. So Seth, you started a trend apparently.
I hope so. And like I said, I hope we see more and more legislators and people taking that step and finding the courage to run for office, because I am worried about the soul of our state. I'm worried
I
about.
think the city of New York right now is in the worst its condition it's ever been. I mean,
Amen.
you and I are both young guys, but
Yeah.
it's to me like to the point where I speak with people all the time, and as you know, I'm in Staten Island. I could never imagine even going into Manhattan right now. It's like
Right.
we really need to get people in there to save this city.
Amen. Amen. And listen, one person can make a difference because one person can yell at the top of their lungs and make sure everyone else is aware. And that's how we build a movement. And that's how you really get real change. But you're completely right. I go to Manhattan a couple times a week, and there is never a point where I feel safe anymore in our city. And this is the reality for a lot of our seniors too. I have a grandmother who lives in Bayside who
I remember we spoke about your grandmother last year. I remember that.
I do not trust at this point in time for her to leave the house at 5 o'clock when it gets dark and cross the street to Dunkin' Donuts because of just the crime that has infiltrated our communities, even our suburban communities in Northeast Queens. And that's very, very
Well,
troubling.
it's everywhere. Listen, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in the South Shore of Staten Island. You could be in Northeast Queens. You could be anywhere right now. And it used to be, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the excuse, well, it's COVID. Well, it's COVID. But
Yeah,
now, listen, you see the numbers. Crime was up 41% here, 38% here. And now it's to the point where people have actually said that they're afraid now to go into Manhattan, and that's politicians. So
right.
clearly there has to be a fix. And clearly our local elected officials, whether it's our state senators in your area, whether it's our assembly members, they have failed. And that's where we need leadership to come in here and get the job done. I almost equated, Seth, and you're not going to probably remember this, but it reminds me so much of in 2006 and 2008 when a lot of people wanted to turn to the Democrats because the Republicans in the Iraq war, and there was so much corruption that had gone on with that. And also you looked at everything that was going on in terms of the bridge to nowhere and the pork barrel and the corruption, all the different things that wound up happening. People turned to the Democrats because they wanted change. And I think it's going to be kind of one of those watershed elections coming up here this year, which I think it bodes well for you because I almost think that you have to throw out like the presidential vote or the registration out the window because I think right now people are going to vote as if their life depends on it, and they're not going to vote for the incumbents.
Right. No, you're 100%. It's true. Again, incumbents come around every election time and promise the same thing. And we have incumbents who have been there for 10, 20, 30 years. This will be Mr. Bronstein. If he wins this election, this will be, he got elected in 2010.
Yep.
He's been there for 12 years. 12
And
years.
what has he done? What has Ed Bronstein done?
He has had no major legislation, no major achievement. Okay. He has voted for bail reform. He votes for congestion pricing. We'll see what he does when it comes to single family zoning. But again, I'm sick and tired of my assembly member because he is my assembly member. I'm sick and tired of the letters of concern of just for the lack of a better term, the BS, again, it is a lot of empty nothing, empty promises. And he'll say one thing.
Empty promises is what the term is, my friend. It's called empty promises.
Say one thing when he's in the district, but vote another way in Albany. And that's because he is loyal to the party. He'll do whatever Kathy Hochul or Eric Adams says. And that's exactly.
And Carl Heastie, because he was loyal to Sheldon Silver. He voted proudly every 2 years for Sheldon Silver. Then he votes for Carl Heastie. And Carl Heastie was the guy just before that said, no, we should keep mask mandates. I'm boosted. I got 2 COVID shots, but we should have more mask mandates. I mean, so Carl Heastie's another guy. And Carl Heastie won't take up bail reform. Carl Heastie and Andrew Stewart Cousins, who Ed Bronstein proudly supports, he's proudly champions of them, are never going to fix bail reform. We even have the mayor of New York City, right? Eric Adams, right? Eric Adams is telling people, please change bail reform. And Carl Heastie and Stewart Cousins, again, friends of Ed Bronstein, don't want to do anything about it.
No, because again, the New York Democrats are run by the extreme left. And I hate
AOC hijacked the party. Listen, I always thought the Democratic Party, to me, was a moderate party. I always, again, and you know me, Seth, I'm not a down-the-ballot Republican. You know me, Seth, from last year. When I was supporting the Democrats. So to me, the Democrats have always been about family. They've been about the unions. They've been about always bringing the different groups. But now, because AOC's running it, de Blasio's running it, Cuomo, Hochul, Jumaane Williams, they've lost their ways. The party lost their ways.
And let's be honest with each other. Albany's corrupt. Most of the politicians up there are out there for themselves and to get reelected. And if you look at the way that most of these politicians are there, a lot of these Democratic lawmakers, they were picked for these seats.
Oh, 100%. And we're going to get to that in a second. But
okay, we'll get to that. But Mr. Bronson is a very interesting history You know,
Oh, I'm well aware of Mr. Braunstein's history. He has a lot of ties to a very well-known individual in the Queens Democratic Party. And I'm trying to bite my tongue here, but I'm well aware of it.
but also, yeah, you're right. But also, he worked for Sheldon Silver. You know, he did work
Well,
for Sheldon Silver. That's how he got picked for the seat. You know, Sheldon Silver was the speaker.
and the person before, little known fact, the person that held this seat before didn't live in the district.
No, she resigned because of the fact that she bought a mansion was bought outside
In
the
Long Island. So we had a problem here. This again, this used to be a district that Frank Padovan fought for this community. I mean, there is a school named after Frank Padovan. Frank Padovan was a legend. We went from Frank Padovan, who always made sure everybody had a voice, to now what we have now in the state legislature representing us. I mean, I don't even want to mention the state senators. I don't even want to mention the other assembly members. In fact, I don't even want to give your opponent any publicity, because these people really, it's sad to see our representation, what's happened. And you know, it's not just Northeast Queens, because I think about Staten Island, where I am, and I think about my legislators. I think about Southern Brooklyn, how they've been hijacked by these leftists like Andrew Gounardes. And I think about everywhere you go in New York. It's not just New York City, but New York State. We're infiltrated. Again, to me, we used to be the party of JFK. We used to be the party of Truman, and we've lost our ways.
Like I said, I say it a lot, and I've said this a lot already throughout my time with you. Common sense. We have lost common sense, and a lot of our lawmakers, again, are out there for themselves. And I think my party change, I hope shows voters that I'm beholden to no party. The only
Well, you better not be. Listen, Seth, you know, because listen, you got to be for the people, because remember, you still are in a district that there's 2.5 more Democrats to Republicans. So you got to go up in there, and you got to be for the people.
My only special interests are my voters, are my constituents.
Good. You better. So Seth, I know you now. You better be.
Frank Padovan, the way he did it, the way he was reelected time and time again, is because he was that community leader who was always.
He worked very hard. He was a tireless worker.
Worked very hard, but he also reached out to every single person. He made every voter, no matter what party you are, no matter what interest group you were from, he made them feel special and heard. And that's exactly the type of leadership we need nowadays.
And I think if people had a chance again, I know God rest his soul, but I think if people would have had a redo against him and Tony Avella, they certainly would have did Frank Padovan and put him back in there, because I think we would have saved ourselves a lot of unnecessary problems here. But I think Vicky Palladino is working on the city level to fix some of those things, and we're hopeful at the state level you're going to fix some of those things. But I tell you what concerns me, though, about your district, especially in Northeast Queens, was this whole redistricting thing here, Seth. Now, originally, there was a New York Independent Redistricting Committee, which it seemed like they were going to draw districts in a very fair way. So we thought we were going to have districts designed in ways to give everybody a shot, right? Everybody a seat at the table. So what happens is, as you know, Seth, we had 5 people, I guess the Democrats appointed, and I guess 5 Republicans the Republicans had appointed, and I guess 1 from each side was not a Republican affiliated, but leaned with the Republicans and the Democrats. And they drew these districts. They were called Plan A and Plan B. And make a long story short, the first time they draw these maps, there was nothing that happened. Then the second time they were supposed to draw them, the commission ceases to exist, and predictably, a few days later, we see the Legislative Task Force on Reapportionment, called LAT4, returns, and boy, what a surprise. Just a few days later, we see districts that were designed to dilute the communities, and on top of that, suppress challengers, and especially in your district, and I'm thinking about the surrounding areas, whether it was state, federal, and especially in your 26th district, we had significant change. And talk about your feelings on the failure of independent redistricting here.
You know, I think it's shameful. It really is shameful. And I put a little statement about this, about how no one can ever say, anybody who voted for these new maps, on any level, the state level and the congressional one, anybody who voted for them is for gerrymandering. Let's put it there. They're for gerrymandering, and they're for disenfranchising certain communities. We see districts like the 26th Assembly District that had the entirety of Whitestone cut out of it. Well, I have a couple of blocks of Whitestone, a couple of blocks. Very little, but they decide to split it up so that the Republican voters don't have a say in Northeast.
How about Middle Village in Queens?
Middle Village.
5 districts that got split into.
Or even look at Flushing.
Yep.
Downtown Flushing got split up, or how the Asian communities in Northeast Queens, whether it's in the main street, right downtown
Mhm.
Flushing, or it's in
Mhm.
like Douglaston on Northern Boulevard, where we have a climbing Asian population, they're split.
Right.
They were split apart so that Democrats can consolidate votes, that Democrats can keep Republican voters disenfranchised, Asian American voters disenfranchised, and honestly just contribute to more corruption. But we look at other districts, and this is a problem that plagues the entire state. You look at districts in Southeast Queens and how they are splitting up the South Asian vote in Richmond Hill and Jamaica on Hillside.
Well, you're a person that you used to work for. His district
Right.
is the biggest example of that when it
It
comes to
is.
that Southeast Asian vote there. Richmond Hill split up to keep him in office.
It's again, the system is meant to keep the legislators who are there happy and in office, and you're doing it at the expense of disenfranchising and taking and being undemocratic. Listen, they cry foul in other states. Decide to gerrymander their map, and let's just be wrong. Republicans do the same thing.
Well, I think it was, and listen, Seth, you know me, I'll call it right down the middle. I thought it was shameful what happened in Alabama. I thought it was shameful what happened in Kansas. I think it's shameful what's going on across the country. And frankly, I don't like what the Democrats did in New York, and I don't like what the Democrats did in New Jersey either.
Right. No, you're completely right. Every party does it, and it shouldn't be right when your party does it, and it shouldn't be wrong when the other party does it. It should be wrong, and it's un-American, and it's undemocratic. But let's just put it out there. And you look at my congressional district, right? And you look at districts like the 3rd congressional district, and then
mine is the 11th, and we were apparently put into Park Slope in Gowanus. When they said, well, apparently we have the same things in common. No, we don't. Staten Island does not have anything in common with Park Slope and Gowanus. I mean,
and I don't understand how Mount Vernon and New Rochelle have the same issues as Old Brookville and Glen Cove, which are considered the Gold Coasts of Long Island.
And you know how bizarre that was? They used the water to attack these districts. That's not allowed. You're not supposed to by law.
Right. And you know what? I love the justification they use for it. They said, well, they're all waterfront communities. Yeah, that makes sense. How does that make sense? Because they're waterfront communities, that means that they have the same issues and the same values? It doesn't. Or you have the 1st congressional district all the way out in Suffolk County, going from literally Montauk to pretty much close to the center of Nassau, towards the Queens border. What type of district is that? What are we doing here? We are literally breaking up communities, disenfranchising voters, and we're just sitting there, and we're letting Democratic lawmakers up in Albany just tear apart our communities.
I think the plan the whole time was to do this from the very beginning. I think that the Democrats decided that, you know what, frig this commission. We're going to put our people on the commission. The commission's going to draw these districts. They're going to go wink and a nod, and they're going to try, but they know they're never going to come to an agreement. So I think for months in advance, Mike Gianaris, who's from Queens, amongst a number of legislators, including Alexandra Biaggi, who's running for Congress, coincidentally, was on the redistricting committee. So I think what happened was they all got in a room in the Democratic conference and said, we're going to draw these districts months and months in advance, and this commission was never going to be designed to pass.
It wasn't. Again, at the end of it, the legislature created this commission. The legislature has to approve the commission's plans, and if the commission didn't come to a conclusion or come to a finalized joint plan, the legislator gets to step in.
Right.
So the legislature, this was all, you're right, it's all right. They all knew what was going to happen. We knew that these separate political appointees, right, from both parties, were not going to come up on one map. So the legislature was going to make a map together, and they were going to make maps that are bulletproof judicially, right? So now we're litigating in the courts, but I don't have much hope for those court cases, because Democrats literally made these maps be bulletproof so they can pass court.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, to be fair, and I'm not going to speak or expound upon something that's in a courtroom, that's going to be decided upon a judge. And you know what? You are seeing different states across the country that are overturning what legislatures have done. So this is the first time we're seeing. And also, the reason why I'm a little bit more optimistic than you is because when the commission was to be designed, an amendment was added to the Constitution which banned partisan gerrymandering. It was supposed to be designed to draw districts to be fair, compact, contiguous, and for no advantage to an incumbent or conversely, for an opposition running, it could put them at an unfair disadvantage. So I think that there is a possibility that this is going to go to the Court of Appeals. And I think because of the law, you can't say definitively they're not going to be overturned because we just don't know.
I'm praying that you're right. I really am. But the fact is, we had members of the Republican caucus in the assembly vote for these maps.
They got good districts. That's why. You and I both know why they did that.
They did, but they're going to use that argument and those votes as a way to say it wasn't partisan. We had Republicans vote for it too. So I'm hoping by some miracle that we have a judge who will not be partisan and be beholden to whoever politically appointed him to that position. But again, I'm optimistic, but we're going to go full, at least in my district. I know on the 26th, I am ready to go full steam ahead and to reach out to every corner of my district. What I expected for the 26th Assembly District pretty much happened. I understood that we're going to cut out Whitestone, and I gave me some more of Glen Oaks. Okay. I'm excited to go meet voters in Glen Oaks. I think that we have to just be energized and keep up this momentum because, again, we've talked about this before the show, how my district still was heavily won by Curtis Lewa.
Yeah, you won by 7 or 8 points. Your district was carried by him.
Right, so it was carried by him. So we're so optimistic about our chances, and again, we're just hoping that common sense just prevails. Regardless of party, we just hope the common sense prevails.
And I think, again, your district at the end of the day, and again, I would hope that it would be changed because I believe that communities should be designed to stay together because this whole idea of gerrymandering to me is extremely bizarre because, one of the reasons I'm upset about it also is Mike Gianaris, who famously for years said, nonpartisan redistricting. I got to fight for nonpartisan redistricting. And he was one of the guys originally that sponsored the idea of having nonpartisan redistricting, right? All of a sudden now, he becomes in power. He's the leader in the state Senate. He's the leader of redistricting, and he completely reneges on his promises. It was wrong when the Republicans did it in 2010 when they went against Ed Koch, and God rest his soul, his plan for nonpartisan redistricting. It was wrong for the Republicans to do what they did, but I think it's also just as wrong what the Democrats did because you can't say, yeah, I'm for nonpartisan redistricting, and then you get the power, and then you do it. I mean, look at these districts. Look at your community, how New York 3 in Congress, the way it was drawn. My community, the 11th Congressional District, the way it was drawn. We were always with Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, Steiker Heights, and Gravesend because we were communities that were contiguous, and we had the same issues. I don't have anything in common with Park Slope and Gowanus. I don't have anything in common. Just like your district is the 3rd. You have nothing in common with the Bronx. You have nothing in common with Westchester. Right. Your community should be in one district, and this is done to dilute the vote. This is done to suppress communities, and I think at the end of the day, I'm hopeful at least the federal maps get overturned, not because it's Republican and Democrat, but because I've always been a believer that communities should be in the same district.
We need fair elections. That's the point. We need fair elections. And you're 100% right. Listen, Senator Gianaris is the reason why so many Greeks have left Astoria and have come to Whitestone or other parts of the state. I'm half Greek. I'm half Puerto Rican. And I'd make history as the first Greek American to represent this district and Puerto Rican American to represent this district with a high number of Greek Americans living in this district. But you're completely right. The 3rd Congressional District of New York stretches 5 counties. 5 counties.
I've never heard that before. New York City counties, I've never heard this before.
Right. You're connecting counties and people and voters that have nothing to do with each other, all for just political gain. And no matter who does it, it's wrong. And it's sickening and it's shameful that certain lawmakers up in Albany think that voters are so stupid, that they are so incompetent to realize what is going on. More than ever, I think voters are aware of what's happening in their city and in their state, and things like this. We've seen an outcry from not only one side of the aisle, but both sides of the aisle when it comes to these maps. So again, I'm hopeful that something changes. I'm keeping the hope. I'm optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
All
Again,
right. That's
I'm
fair.
cautiously optimistic.
Listen, at the end of the day, we're in a very unique situation. I know everyone's saying, "Oh,
Right,
well, previous issues and previous cases," but this is different because I do believe that because you have something in the law that's changed in the
right,
Constitution, redistricting is banned to a certain extent. But listen, I think it should be a fairer process to me. Just like when the Republicans complain about the mail-in ballots, when the Democrats do this, it only amplifies what the other
right.
side is saying. So to me, both sides are wrong when they armchair quarterback. So at the end of the day, let's bring it down and dial it down a bit. And I want to ask you something also because it's obviously a hot topic in the news is Governor Hochul. And again, she's all over the place. She's another one here. I just, to me, it's another Cuomo. And she now has decided that we're going to lift the indoor mask mandate. But for our schools, we're going to extend them. And I'm looking at even governors across the country, right? And I'm thinking about Delaware, and I'm thinking about Connecticut. I'm thinking about New Jersey. And those governors are lifting all those mandates for schools included. And Seth, you're a young guy like me, and I think it's just so sad when I see 5 and 6-year-old kids all day have to put a mask on.
Yeah.
And clearly to me, it's not the same as a 75 or an 80-year-old person when they deal with COVID. I mean, what's your thoughts on how the governor has handled all these crazy mandates here?
I'm in college, so I'm one of the students who have to wear a mask when they're in class.
God help you, Seth. I'm so happy I'm not in school anymore. I've told people I would just not want to go to school. Not that I was good in school anyway.
It's very hard to, and I have nephews who are in pre-K, preschool, who have to wear these masks everywhere they go. And again, I think it's just another hypocritical mandate from the governor, because we see other states lifting their restrictions and they're saying that they're following the numbers in X, Y, and Z. And yeah, I do think we should follow the science and where the numbers are going. And I think for a while now, we should have been able to unmask our students. And again, I think I come from with the unique perspective of being a student and talking to students. I talk to almost on a monthly basis student leaders from across the school districts that I represent in the 2016 and I've been in our classrooms. I talk to student leaders. I talk to students who are on school boards, and I say to them, how do you feel about this mandate or that mandate? How do you feel about wearing masks? And they hate it. They can't hear each other. That's one. And two, there is this social emotional need to be able to see each other's faces and to read each other's expressions. And it's just good for development. And what we see students who want some sense of normal, right? They want to be able to hear you finally. They want to hear their classmates again. They want to be able to have that connection. And I think it's very hypocritical that these lawmakers will host private fundraisers in the Lower East Side and wherever they are and unmask. And
look at AOC was in Florida, no mask, nothing, right? No mask. Governor Newsom, California, all those sports athletes. He was with Magic Johnson and you name them, no mask, right?
Right. No, it's hypocritical. It's just another form of their hypocrisy showing. And again, the governor is waiting until after the winter break for some reason to finalize the schools. But there's no reason why you can have packed arenas in New York City and across the state have unmasked.
Listen, I cover CUNY. I cover a lot of like St. Joe's, Long Island. I cover John Jay, all this stuff, Skyline Conference, CUNY. And I want to give a shout out to a good friend of ours, Ron Laird, a friend of mine, supporter, agrees with 100%. And what I find so hypocritical was that for the whole month of January, all of the CUNY and the local Skyline conferences had no fans playing in it. But if I went to Madison Square Garden, if I went to UBS Arena, to Barclays, no problem. But apparently in these universities with academia, you're all going to get COVID.
Yeah, it's just hypocritical at this point. And again, you talk to students, you talk to parents, they just want the option not to wear it. If a student, right, and their family decides that they want to keep wearing masks, that's up to them. No one's saying they can't, right? But at the same time, students and families should have the option to remove their masks, because students are dying and just craving this normalcy again.
I cringe when I see poor little kids and walking in the street with a mask. I'm sorry if I'm going to lose supporters from this. I cringe. And listen, I got nieces and they're in school. I listen. I tell my brother all the time. I wouldn't even put the kid in public school system right now because to me it's so sad. I got to be
A
honest
lot
with you.
of students are leaving the school system for that
And
exact.
they should, because you know what? The school system, it's not safe. You're not getting a good environment. You're wearing masks all day. They want you to get vaccinated, boosted. Why? Listen, I'll be honest with you. Why would I put a kid in the New York City public school system? Not like when you and I went to school, even. Listen,
Right.
I'm about maybe 10 or so years older than you. But, you think about 15, 20 years ago to where we are now, it's disgraceful. Disgraceful.
It is. It's very disgraceful. It's hypocritical. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York State, and other elected officials should not be able to host $1,000 plate fundraising dinners without masks, while everyone else has insisted to wear one. We should not have, thousands of people packed in an arena without having to wear masks, and so the students should be masked. It just doesn't make sense. It just
ridiculous.
It does not make sense. It is stupid. We're at the point where we need to kind of move on with our lives. We should always follow the signs and be wary and put our health.
And I think people should get vaccinated. Listen, people should definitely be vaccinated. We talked about this when you ran last year. Yeah. People should be vaccinated. There's no question about it.
I agree. Listen, my stance is I am for vaccinations. I am vaccinated. I would encourage my community members to get vaccinated. But this is another issue, and I don't want to go into this too much, but we still see, that the unvaccinated New Yorkers are minority communities still because the outreach has not significant.
I listen to a lot of radio overnight, and that's a big thing I hear a lot in different neighborhoods, that those people in those areas did not get the vaccine or did not get them at a higher ratio than, let's say, Northeast Queens as an example.
Right. Listen, we have people who just don't trust what they're hearing in the media and from the government. And I understand them. We have to do a better job of reaching out to them. But these mandates, all they do is just suffocate people and suffocate our economy. If you look at Broadway, for example, how staggering the numbers are, how low attendees are because of these mandates, and you're losing millions upon millions of dollars. This industry, which is not just the Broadway industry and the show industry, but also our restaurants and our hotels in the area, that these mandates are killing our economy, and they are putting people out of work when we should be putting people in work. We should be getting people more jobs, and we should be opening up our city to tourism.
Absolutely. Listen, and Ron Ladd, who's a big supporter of mine, and he hears me normally doing sports talk, and he's obviously a huge Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, Columbia Fireflies fan. He chimes in and says, you know what? To everybody who has to serve those dinners, they all had to wear a mask, and that's stupid. Right. To me, the whole thing's been bizarre. I mean, this all started with Cuomo, because I remember speaking with you last year, and we were talking about these confusing small business guidelines, and even now, where if you're sitting at the table, you don't have to wear a mask, but if you get up, you have to wear a mask, and if you're a server, you have to wear a mask. It's almost like, does COVID live when you sit down or not live when you sit down? The whole thing, especially here in New York. It was so bizarre, just completely bizarre.
Right, you're right. Again, if you are sick and you have COVID, stay home. Just do that.
But I think that's always should have been. Listen, if you were sick of anything in life, you were always told, stay home.
Right, and that's what we have to do. We have to be able to. We are managing this virus, and we're very clearly managing it. Get vaccinated, but get rid of these mandates. They're just suffocating the people.
They're killing the state's economy. Our economy is destroyed.
Our small businesses are suffering. Your mom and pop pizzeria or your mom and pop Italian restaurant on the corner is suffering because they have people who are not coming, first off, to their restaurant because they have to be vaccinated. And second, we have a lot of fraud when it comes to vaccine cards as it is, right? So what's the point? Nothing is done is being good. And again, we're just looking at these lawmakers and these elected officials who are just, basically putting their hypocrisy on loud so everyone can see it. So again,
there's no question that there is no question that they have done that. Our elected officials, by and large, have been big examples. And also, I would even add, there are people that are vaccinated but don't, on principle, want to show a vaccine card. I actually have had on the Libertarian Party candidate running against AOC, and he has said out of principle, he will not show his vaccine card, and he will not go out to any restaurant because of that, because people really feel like it's not your business. Just like, again, when people would get an abortion, it was never anybody's business. Hey, listen, why are you getting an abortion? And again, not to say that's wrong or right, because people do have legitimate reasons for those things. But I also think when it comes to a vaccine, I don't think people should have to tell anybody if I got it or not. To me, what we've done here now is we've pitted people against each other. And that should never be the case.
Yeah.
We all are New Yorkers. I'm upset about it for the main reason when at the very beginning said Cuomo and everybody said, first responders, New Yorkers, we're all together. And then what happens months later? De Blasio lays them off. Cuomo blames them all. And then we turn into this whole system of people turning on each other and turning against each other. And it was so sad to see what is going on here.
Right, you're right. Listen, these mandates, again, my final word on them is that these mandates, whether they're mask or vaccine mandates, are just slowing New York's recovery. And they are suffocating our economy. They are suffocating small businesses. They are suffocating our schools and our students. And again, my campaign is all about returning power back to families and back to students and back to communities. So again, I am for seeing these mask mandates go. And I'm looking forward to having a Republican governor like Congressman Lee Zeldin, who on day one I look forward to working with in Albany and really just returning freedom and choice back to our communities.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We'll certainly see what happens on that. But I know one thing. Voters in the 26th Assembly District may very well have a choice to put somebody in there that can definitely make a difference for us and bring back common sense. And his name is Seth Breland. And, of course, you can follow Seth on Twitter and Instagram at Seth for New York. And we've got another 25 or 30 or so more minutes with him. And it's always good to speak with Seth and catch up with him. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of SportsWire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you are catching us live here on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, everyone else, we will be back here tomorrow afternoon New York time and evening UK time. We'll be speaking with pro wrestling star here, Jack Johnson. So really, really excited to be speaking with Jack, just as we're excited to be speaking with Seth. We'll be talking in the UK with Jack Johnson. He's got a huge matchup coming on Super Bowl Sunday for the biggest date ever. And I want to thank everybody at Fight TV that has promoted that and given us this opportunity to promote that event once again with pro wrestling star Franco Varga, who's been in there with huge victories over WWE opponents. So very, very excited for that. So you can tune in for that when we're back on the Sports Report. And we are here talking all things related here to the 26th Assembly District here and Seth Breland and his campaign for the New York State Assembly. And Seth, apparently there's somebody that's close to you that's pretty famous these days and apparently was on TV. And on a lighter note, let's talk about your other half, your better half, because last thing I see, she's going to be on TV and she might just have a little bit more spotlight than you, my friend.
Oh yeah. She is definitely no, my girlfriend I've been with her for over 2 years now. And
okay.
She has definitely been my rock, my motivation, and just an amazing person throughout the way and throughout my personal journeys, whether it's politics or just my personal growth. She's been amazing. And so she was recently, unfortunately, she wasn't on the show, but she did the promo for FBI on CBS. And you may also see her in a couple of Spectrum commercials.
Okay.
With Spectrum. So if you see someone tapping away with an Oculus or on an iPad, it's probably her. She has been pursuing acting since a very young age, and she was 10, 9, something like that. And she what she's wanted to do, and she is doing an amazing job, and I'm very proud of her. And I'm very lucky to have someone who puts up with me and all my craziness and all the political craziness that I sometimes put her through. And she is a resident of Northeast Queens. Unfortunately, she got redistricted out of my assembly district.
Oh, wow. What a bummer. Boy, the Democrats really knew. Let's take Seth's girlfriend out of the district.
they were going after me, but her parents have deep connections to Northeast Queens. Her father went to Bayside High School. And she's the testament to how good Northeast Queens is and how great the schools are and how she took the opportunity in school and outside of school to just really, really excel. And she's also on the Community Education Council for District 25, School District 25. Okay. So she's also pretty active in her community. So she's an awesome person.
I know our friend Adriana Vilas is big with the Community Education Council. Yeah, that's right. I got to give her a huge shout out.
I served on that community with her, and Adriana is awesome too. And I can go into long lengths about why she's awesome. But girlfriend's a rock star. She's amazing and definitely someone who motivates me, and I'm very proud to be her to call myself her boyfriend. So.
Oh well, congratulations to
Proud of
her
her.
on her success. We'll definitely be. I'll be on the lookout for those Spectrum commercials. I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
Spectrum commercials they're always on when I'm watching wrestling. So the next time I'm watching WWE Raw or I'm watching SmackDown, I'm now going to be like, wow, is that Seth's girlfriend? I'm going to be more
watch out
interested.
for it. Yeah. It's because I'll have people come up to me like, "Was your girlfriend on TV?" Or I'll get text, and I'll get a text actually from Adriana just talking about it. She's like, "Is your girlfriend on TV?" And I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much. She's almost there. She's almost there." But no, she did a promo. But fingers crossed that she gets something really big soon.
That reminds me, we had a guest on a while back on the show who's a good friend of mine, a guy named Mike Taverna, who's a huge pro wrestling star. He was actually in the Philadelphia cream cheese commercials during COVID, and everybody would ask me, they would say, "Oh, didn't you interview that guy? Didn't you know him?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's him. That's him. Everybody knows him from those Philadelphia cream cheese commercials. He was in AEW and everything else, but they know him from the commercial. When you're on a commercial, that's almost like being bigger in a movie or being on TV.
Right.
That's a big deal. So obviously, we know she's on her way to bigger and better things here for sure, just like you are in 2022. And I also wanted to ask you in the fact that you were at a Back the Blue rally recently, and your district, I know, has a lot of retired law enforcement. And what did that do for you in terms of your support of law enforcement?
Listen, I am fully behind our men in blue and women in blue as well. It's sickening to see an entire group of people who go out every single day and put their lives on the line, and see them ridiculed and diminished and called these vulgar sayings and phrases, and it's absolutely despicable. It's absolutely despicable. And I went to a Back to Blue rally in Great Neck with Congressman Lee Zeldin was there. The county executive of Nassau, Bruce Blakeman, was there. The county comptroller, Elaine Phillips, was there. Sorry. True leaders, first off, true leaders in their communities, and across, and just example of great leadership across the state. But our law enforcement has come under such attack, and in the 2 short months of this year, we have seen too many officers pass away. I've had to go to too many funerals these past couple months for officers that have fallen in line of duty. And again, it's sickening to see certain extreme lawmakers, while these funerals are taking place, we see them liking tweets comparing our cops to Nazis, or saying that
we have somebody that wants to run in your district for Congress, and Alessandra Biaggi, that's at the top of that list.
Don't get me started on her, but you're right. It's disgusting to see a whole group of people who are diminished by certain lawmakers and certain people because of the bad few. Listen, every group out there has their bad few.
I think there should be reforms to the police department, because I do know people, whether it's of color, whether it's even people that look like you and I, that have had problems with the police. So I think there are bad people in the police department, but just like everything else. But we don't politicize the people that go out and put their lives on the line every single day to keep us safe. That's ridiculous.
And that's why I'm 100% against any law that makes our cops' jobs harder and that makes crime more rampant, or makes any New York or any part of New York soft on crime. I'm against defunding the police. I'm against.
You better be against defunding
any money. I'm against taking away any money from our police departments. And again, I wish we would see Albany pass resolutions of support and ensure that no money is taken away from their budget. Look at the NYPD, the nation's finest, okay?
Right.
Their mission goes well beyond New York City. They have.
Well, I think back to when George W. Bush was president, and one of the things he said, and I used this, I think, when we had Adriana on the show, and I used it with a couple of different other people who've come on the show since. And George W. Bush said at the time, he said, the reason that we've not had a terrorist attack on New York City or on our nation's soil is because of the counterintelligence that the New York City Police Department would give to Homeland Security. So that's how powerful the New York City Police Department is. It isn't just about going out there and keeping the streets safe. And yes, that's vital. But the information that our police officers gave to whether it's Homeland Security or counterintelligence, categorically from a president of the United States,
Right.
said it kept our country and our city safe.
Right. Listen, after 9/11, those tragic events really woke us up and our law enforcement up and our intelligence agencies up. And New York's mission, New York, our NYPD and their mission goes well beyond the 4 counties, the 5 counties of New York City. And we know that they're stationed in Europe and different places to gather intelligence to keep New Yorkers safe. So I want to see more cops on the street. That's first off. More cops on the subway. More cops patrolling our neighborhoods. I promise I will never ever hide the fact that I am for our officers. I will never hide that fact. And we have lawmakers like the incumbent in my district who will say they're for the blue, but will never come out. Never go to a
I haven't
rally.
seen him at a Back to Blue rally, by the way. The incumbent, I don't think I've ever seen him at one.
You'll never see it. You'll never see him there. And that's the same thing for a lot of these moderate lawmakers. But they'll go.
And you know why that is? Because he runs on the Working Families Party line, which in their platform does not support law enforcement. So he's never going to buck them. Never.
Right. So again, we have a large amount of law enforcement families in my district, retired law enforcement families in my district, and I hope to earn their vote, and I hope they know that I am behind them. I am for them. I am for and recognize the sacrifices that their loved one has made on behalf of every New Yorker. And again, when someone's breaking into your house, who are you going to call? Who are you going to call?
I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. Who are you going to call? You're going to clap your hands, rub a lamp and hope a genie comes and poofs them away. No, you're going to call these.
I'll get my little. I have a little Energizer flashlight. That's what I'll use. Yeah,
right. A little Energizer buzzy to bunny to scare them away. No, you're going to call officers, right? So it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that our finest and these people who put their lives on the line every day have to endure such.
I never thought there would be a time that police officer work would be politicized. I never thought I'd see the day for that. I mean, in full disclosure, when I was in college, and I didn't go through with it, obviously, because look at me. I took the police officer test. I didn't want the job. I didn't want to deal with it. But, I shudder about the fact that people, peers of mine that went out there and people I know in my community, like your community, that went out there and put that uniform on, put that badge on, and they every day didn't know if they were going to come back home. I think about somebody I know, Joe Bonner very well, lives up the street from me, a retired detective, worked at a Times Square for 25 years. I mean, I think about all the different people that I know, and they never knew they were coming back. It wasn't like being any other job. It wasn't like going and working at McDonald's or working at the gas station where, listen, you're in the community, you come back to work. You're a police officer. You don't know if you're going to come back home. You don't know if you're going to get shot and killed. You don't know if you're going to be in East New York or Spanish Harlem or wherever it's going to be, Mott Haven, and you don't know if you're going to come back, or Brownsville. You just don't know. So what these men and women do, I mean, we got to stop with the politicizing. Yes, there's bad things, but we fix those at a later date. Main thing is we get more cops on the street. Seth Breland's going to be the guy that's going to get those cops on the street. You're going to fix that bail reform law, because that bail reform law is
we're getting rid of bail reform. That's it. We're on day one.
And that's why I think it's important that we elect more Republicans to the assembly, because right now we have 40 Republicans, 43 Republicans. And let's say we get to 50. Let's say we get to 52, 53, even 55. Now you've got a shot that you can convince those Democrats who maybe because of their district or because they felt that they were too afraid of the working families or AOC, now they can come along and say, you know what, let's now vote to bring back the laws that kept us safe. Let's make sure the police are protected. If we do those things, getting you elected, getting people in other places elected, I think we can change it. And I think this is the year to do it, because I think this is going to be a year. If you're a Republican running, this is a very, very good year to run, I think.
No, you're completely right. Listen, we have these soft on crime policies that release these criminals just back into our communities. Cashless bail is not a good idea for New York State. We have, and we've seen this in the victims, right? The recently fallen police officers that were shot in Harlem. The victim's family and widow went up on stage and had the courage to literally point out that her this fallen officer was against these soft on crime policies, that he was upset with the Manhattan DA and all he was doing to let crime run rampant in the streets of New York City. And that's exactly what bail reform does. Now, Democrats are nervous about midterms, and they're trying to make changes to this bail reform bill, and
And that's why the COVID mandates are going away now because now it's an election.
That's exactly why we're gonna get maskless schools, not because the governor actually wants to, but because she wants to do well this year. Because her
100%, 100%, 1,000%,
and that's what they're trying. That's what they're trying to do with the bail reform bill is to make changes to it. But we see the majority leader in the New York State Senate pleading with her colleagues, her on the left and progressives to go out there and to back these changes to bail reform because they are desperately afraid to lose. And again, I hope voters just see how corrupt that is, that they're changing laws not because they actually want to make our streets safer. If they actually did, they would never pass this law at all. But they're doing it to save their own behinds. They're doing it for their own political gain. And again, that's why I think any person who has voted for bail reform should be voted out of office. Plain and simple.
And I think this is the year that now we're going to have that chance because 2020 was the COVID year and people had COVID on their mind. Now they've seen that things have gotten even worse because like I said, 2020, there was the excuse you have to vote for president. And on top of that, people were still occupied with COVID. Now people are fed up with COVID mandates. There's no more, hey, variants, we're going to do more lockdowns. People are tired of hearing that. And the Democrats in New York were the biggest proponents of that. People, I think, are tired of what has happened on their streets. It's everywhere you go. People now want those fixes, and I think this is the year. Like I said, reminds me of 2006 and 2008 with the Iraq War protests. People came out to vote. They came out to make a change statement. I think that statement's going to be Seth Breland. And Seth, I also hope we can get some more people in your area as well because we got a couple of state Senate districts that I think in order for you to win this race, you need people at the top of the ticket to help you. I know governor is going to be one thing, but you've got a state Senate district or two that I think you're going to need to do well with a candidate or two to help you there.
I know, I definitely agree, and I know that there's a great candidate, Stefano Forte, running for office for state senate, and he's still figuring out which district he's going to run for because of how gerrymandered.
He better run in something. That's all.
And he will. He definitely will.
Okay. Good.
But we have George Santos running the 3rd congressional district.
I know him. He ran in 2020, right?
He came very close to beating Tom Suozzi, and he's at this point, George Santos is going to be the next member of Congress from the 3rd congressional district, especially with state senators like Biaggi jumping into the race. So no doubt about that. But we definitely have a good slate of candidates who are running. And it's important that we do not spend time fighting and wasting money on a primary and just going right to November, being a unified force.
And I think that's important. I think it's very important because we saw with Palladino, she was involved, like you said, a 3-way race from what you were telling us. And we don't want to see that in your race or in any other races. We don't want that.
Her margin of victory would have been so much different if it wasn't a 3-way race. And Vicky Palladino, if you actually look at her 2018 race against John Liu for state senate, she would have run. If Tony Abell did not run third candidate, she would have won that race because the numbers were there for her.
I'll tell you what, I think it's a definite possibility. We'll never know because she didn't get that chance, but she's got into the city council. So
now she's there now, and she's not taking it for granted. I know that, and but we have some great candidates, Republican candidates who are common sense, who want to restore public safety, who want to keep the beauty of our neighborhoods, and just get New York on the right track.
We have to save New York. Honestly, we really have to because New York, we're legitimately, we're at a crossroads. We're like people again, you and I don't remember the 70s. We don't remember the 80s, but it's at our doorstep. And if we don't get people like you in office in 2022, we're in deep doo-doo.
And this is the year. There is no waiting 2 years. There's no waiting 4 years. There's no waiting for the next election cycle. This is the year to do it.
This is it. This is it.
If we miss our opportunity, I'm afraid that in the meantime, we are going to be giving a lot of ground to a lot of radicals, and we're going to see legislation and inaction that will just keep plunging New York down the wrong path. So
absolutely, listen, absolutely.
About this year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's why, to me, again, before we get closing thoughts and one or two other things I want to ask you, that's why if we get to 50 Republicans or 52 Republicans or 55. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot because now we can get 15 or 20 moderates because there's still probably 15 or 20 moderates in the assembly.
Right.
We can now for sure make sure nothing ever gets passed again, like bail reform and these
Right.
goofy policies.
And that's why it's so important that we win the state Senate too. Because the state Senate, if we can pick up a couple of seats here and there, if we can pick up some Northeast Queens state Senate seats, it's going to be key again and helping to change the balance of power in New York and to force both parties to work together. And because what we've seen is one party rule.
And that's why I don't like the
Doesn't work.
redistricting, because what the redistricting does is it now only keeps in the extremes.
Right.
Whereas if you have a fair process,
Right.
it gives Democrats and Republicans to compete on that playing field to go for everybody's votes. Where if you look at the congressional districts, they drew 4 solid Republican districts and everything else was Democrat. There's no competition. If the state Senate plan goes into effect, I mean, look at the disaster it's going to do for us in New York State and especially New York City. No competition.
Yeah, and listen, look at New York 11, but for example, the Staten Island district that's represented by Congressman Maliotakis. Before her was a Democrat. That was a very
exactly. Max Rose won it, and Max Rose campaigned is not a leftist. He campaigned as the antithesis of AOC and everything else.
It was a very swing district, which forced every person.
It always was when we were the 13th or
Right.
the 11th. It was always Staten Island and the other neighborhoods in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Bay Ridge, Dyker Heights, Gravesend, and Bath Beach, and a little bit of Midwood and Sheepshead Bay. Was always two-party system. It was always competitive. Everybody had to compete. What they're doing here, this would be a disaster.
It is. I agree.
This is why, again, we need Seth Breland to get us into the 26th Assembly District so we can definitely make some change. And Seth, I want to ask you before closing thoughts and such, give me 1 or 2 issues that you would like to fix that the incumbent has done that you want to change.
Oh, there's so I'm gonna squeeze in 3.
All right.
I'll try to be quick.
For you.
I'll try to be brief. Bail reform and cashless bail. We have to get rid of it. Okay, it has made our streets less safe. It has made our streets dangerous. And this is an issue that doesn't just affect young New Yorkers or old New Yorkers. It affects every New Yorker, every school child who needs a safe commute to school, every adult who needs a safe commute to work, every senior who needs to be safe walking down their block. Okay, I have a grandmother, like I said earlier, who lives in the district, who I would not feel safe walking on the block. I remember when, I was younger and I was able to, in the summer days when I didn't have school, be at the park until 8 p.m. at night to, freeze some grapes in the freezer and bring them with my friends and be there till 8, 9 o'clock at night in the park and not have to worry about it being safe or worry about some drug deal going down. And what we have seen are soft on crime bills that make our streets less safe, that make these communities that were once deemed safe not safe anymore. And you're literally putting criminals back on the streets to just commit more crime. So that's something that we're going to get. We're going to get rid of bail reform, get rid of cashless bail. This whole less is more bill of letting people out early. No, that's not how things work. If you want to, rehabilitate people, you do it while they're in prison. You don't say, okay, we're going to let them rehabilitate after, they're out of prison. No, you work on it while they're in prison. You don't just let criminals not serve their sentence. Like he said, you do the crime, you serve the time, and I want to bring that back for New York State. The second issue that's, I think, a big topic and a big issue when it comes to South Asian and Asian American voters, and I have a lot of them in my district, are the specialized high schools and the gifted and talented programs. We have seen it a huge assault, not only by the mayor and the chancellor, or the former mayor and the former chancellors on these programs, but we also seen the inaction of Albany to step in to protect these programs, right? We have seen our assembly members and our state senators be concerned, but allow for the scapegoating of our Asian American communities and our South Asian American communities who proudly have cultural beliefs that put such importance on education, right? And that they send their kids to these specialized high schools and these gifted and talented programs. And as taxpayers, it's our fundamental right to demand quality education for our students. The DOE, the Department of Education, needs to provide our students the right education at the right level, right, with the right academic rigor, because we're paying for it. And that's just clear and none. That's it. Nothing else to that. So protecting our gifted and talented programs, expanding our specialized high schools, bringing one to Queens, and revoking mayoral control, because for too long has the Department of Education been a political tool for the mayor to push his agenda on our communities and to just shore up his votes in certain communities. And so no more of that. And again, this is all about returning power back to the people. It's about returning power back to our education councils and our community boards, and having them be the first line of defense and decision making when it comes to our communities. Because things like the community boards, things like education councils, it's elected parents and it's appointed members of the community to be on these boards. So more than ever, we need to just really return power back to the people. And the third issue that I think is going to become such a big issue in the next few weeks, and we'll see what happens in Albany, is the single family zoning. We know the governor is trying to sneak in the elimination of single family zoning in the budget for the state. And I think she said something like, the way that the governor worded it was that within 6 blocks of an LIRR station, Long Island Railroad station, there will no longer be single family zoning. So now we're going to have developers who are going to be able to come in into Little Neck, Douglaston, Auburndale, Bayside, and build high rises and tear apart the beauty of our neighborhoods. People come to the suburbs for a reason, to have a quiet, more small town feel. And the elimination of single family zones is a radical idea that we see in the city council, and we now see at the state level. And we need legislators who will be against these ideas, who are against tearing away the beauty of our neighborhoods. You look at College Point, you look at Whitestone, you look at Little Neck. For years, developers want to come in, and we've known they want to come in, and Eastern Queens, and tear down and buy these little bungalows and little houses and build these skyscrapers, these monstrosities that just take away from the beauty of our neighborhoods. And again, this is all to just pack people in, right? So people's way of life, their quality of life, is just under attack. We have unsafe streets. We have developers who want to come in and tear apart our neighborhoods, and we have assaults on our freedoms, on our rights to choose what type of education we want for our children. So those are the 3 things that I'm focused on: crime, education, and quality of life. Because again, those are, I think, that's what is at stake for this election.
And no question for me, when you talk about single family zoning and changing the down zoning law, in fact, that was a law that Tony Avella passed many years ago in the city council, which frankly saved our neighborhoods. The fact that we would renege on that and go and all of a sudden change the culture of our communities, that's going to hurt us if you're an environmentalist. That's going to hurt us in terms of all your services. That's going to cost us more. To me, that's a terrible thing. And that's only being done for votes. That's being done for contributions from developers. That's a sick game to play. And that's what these politicians do. And that's why we need to change them. Just like we change laundry, we need to change people like Braunstein, change people like John Liu, Dan Rosenthal, Nili Rosick. I mean, they all have to go. Anybody that's voted for these things and supports or doesn't speak up, they have to go. If you don't vote them out now, they're like cockroaches. You'll never get rid of them. You will never get rid of them. So you have to get rid of them. We have a chance. We have the right time. It's the right climate. People like Seth Breland are going to be the people that can make that change coming up here November the 8th. And we're not that far away. As crazy as it sounds, we're less than 9 months away. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you do what you got to do to help this man. Go to Seth for NY, Instagram, Twitter. Also keep up to date with him on all of the outlets out there. He is somebody that is going to bring change in leadership. And before we get closing thoughts from you, Seth, I want to ask you, if you were to win, what would it mean to you to represent this district?
Oh, I think it'd be the greatest honor of my life. And I promised to only serve, and I made this promise already, to only serve a maximum of 4 terms, and that's 8 years. And I say that because I do think that it is wrong to sit there and talk about how long a person has been there and how entrenched they've come. And I think it is democratic to, at a certain point, you can only do so much and only go so far. So within those 8 years, I am going to, champion all the issues that my constituents care about and they're fighting for, and like the ones I talked to you about. But, I love my community. I love walking down the street and bumping into somebody I know. I love going to a coffee shop or the same Dunkin' Donuts and then recognizing who I am. And that's exactly the type of feel that we have in Northeast Queens. We have this old town vibe and feeling where you know your neighbors, you know your community members, you know them because you live in the same area, because you went to the same high school or the same school. And I just truly love my district. I love the people in my district. I love the beauty of my district. I love the schools in my district, the people, and it would just really be the greatest honor of my life to serve the community that gave so much to me, that gave me such a clear picture of what New York could be like, of how we can rebuild our communities and put New York on track, and just all those things that I've been able to explore in my district, my communities. It's be the greatest honor of my life to just serve the people who help raise me, honestly.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have a chance November the 8th to elect Seth Breland to the state assembly. He will do some of those things that he just said and some. And this is the time, ladies and gentlemen. If we don't do it now, we'll never do it. We have a chance here to elect Seth and other like minded people like him. Let's definitely try our best to make that happen. Seth for NY, Instagram, and Twitter. Keep up to date with him on all the great things he is doing. He has supported us in the past. He has been with us. We support him regardless of his party. We know him from both parties, but we support him because of the message and the person. And that's what's going to take to win this district. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about person and message. He has the right message, the right time. Vicky Palladino won in this district, so it can be done. We've seen success here. Seth is going to do it. He's going to do great things. We're very confident about that. And my friend, I know you're a busy man. You got campaign strategy sessions. You got fundraising calls. You got whatever else you're going out there, preparing to campaign tomorrow, whatever it might be, school as well, girlfriend, everything else. But I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug that we haven't got a chance to plug or want to replug, please do. And I can't thank you enough. And the floor is yours.
Well, first, again, like I said in the beginning, I love sitting down and talking with you because it's so nice to talk to somebody who's just level-headed and sees the issues for what they are. Again, you can follow me on Seth for NY, and all my Instagram, Facebook handles are all Seth for NY, and my website is also sethforny.com. So you can check out me there in my bio and my story. But yeah, my name is Seth Breland. I'm running for the 26th Assembly District in Northeast Queens. And I'm running to represent my home, my neighborhood, my community, the people I love, the people that I call family, practically my neighbors. And I think that this year is a pivotal year. It is a year that we can truly save the soul of New York State, to save the soul of New York City, and to really put us on a track upward, to put us on a track where every New Yorker, no matter who you are, where you're from, is prosperous, is safe, is living a life of a good education, of a beautiful neighborhood, of good jobs, of great small businesses. And that's what I want for every community. And that's what I want for Northeast Queens. I want good schools. I want safe streets. I want us to back our frontline workers and our law enforcement. And that's exactly what we're going to do when we go to Albany this upcoming year. So I'm excited to work with every member of my community and have the opportunity to talk to every member of my community, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you live in Glen Oaks, you live in Douglas or Little Neck, no matter where you live. We're going to be out there. We're going to talk to you. And I hope and I pray to earn your vote and have the distinct privilege and honor to serve you in the New York State Assembly. So again, I'll see you guys out there on the campaign trail. I'm sure I'll be in contact with you and let you know how things are going. But good things ahead, and we're excited. We're very excited for the opportunity that we have in front of us.
Listen, there was an old expression that John F. Kennedy famously used, and I've been using it for 3+ years. I'm on the air, and it's a rising tide lifts all boats. And I guarantee you that Seth Breland is that person that is going to lift our boats, not only in Northeast Queens, the 26th Assembly District, Queens County, but New York State as a whole. He's the right candidate. He's got the right message. We're excited about his campaign. We know now he's got the right message and the right time to do it. My friend, keep up the great work out there. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for stepping up to the plate here. We're looking forward to seeing how the campaign transcribes and goes on here down the road. I'm sure we'll have you back, and thank you for all you do, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
As we're here on the News Report, the #1 global news show with candidate for the 26th Assembly District here in Northeast Queens, and that's Seth Breland. As I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sports Wire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. We'll be back here tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon, New York time, with pro wrestling star Jack Johnson. We'll be talking about the big Fight TV sponsored event, the biggest date ever. So looking forward to speaking with Jack. We'll also be back with GT Ministry World Champion Garth Angel Friday as well. So a lot to do, with lot to talk about here. So we will be back here live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and sportnarium.com, as well as LinkedIn, as we were just with Seth Breland, candidate for the 26th Assembly District. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, the radio only, we will have some content for you in a little while, so stay tuned while I reset the dial. But we were just with Seth Breland, candidate for New York's 26th Assembly District. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. I am the host of the Sports Report and the News Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce.